Your VPN just became a legal liability, not for the website you're visiting, for the website hosting you. And that distinction, as small as it sounds, is about to change how the entire internet handles your identity. Utah's Governor Spencer Cox signed Senate Bill 73 on March 19, 2026. It went into effect May 6th. Buried inside it is a clause that explicitly names virtual private networks, proxy servers, and any tool that masks geographic location, and then renders all of them legally irrelevant. You can still run your VPN. The law just says it doesn't count. If your body's in Utah, Utah's law applies to you. Full stop. And before you close this tab, thinking that's a Utah problem, stay with me. Because what started in one state legislature is already written into federal bills, and it has a very specific target: the infrastructure that keeps you anonymous online. Not the content, the infrastructure. Let's go back 3 years to understand how we got here. Louisiana passed the first major online age verification law in January 2023. The pitch was simple and almost impossible to argue against publicly. Keep children away from adult content online. Require websites to check that visitors are adults before granting access. Other states watched, then copied: Florida, Texas, Arkansas, Virginia, Montana. By early 2026, 25 states had active age verification laws on the books, with 16 more pushing bills through committee. Half the country built an entirely new regulatory framework around internet access in under 3 years. For a while, it felt contained. Adult platforms would comply. Kids would be safer. Everyone moves on. Nobody looked too closely at what the compliance mechanism actually required, which was collecting identity documents from adults, at scale across the internet, and storing them somewhere. That part of the conversation got very quiet very fast. Then millions of users did exactly what you would expect them to do. They downloaded a VPN. When the UK's Online Safety Act kicked in, Proton VPN reported signups from the UK spiking over 1,400% within minutes of enforcement going live. NordVPN logged a 1,000% spike in UK subscriptions in a single day. In the US, VPN downloads in states with the new age verification laws climbed steadily through 2024 and 2025. The public's response was clear: add a wall, we route around it. That is not defiance. That is literally how the internet was designed to behave. And that is exactly when lawmakers stopped targeting websites and started targeting the tool itself. SB 73 is the first law in American history to call out VPNs by name inside age verification legislation. Section 14 states that any individual is considered to be accessing a website from Utah if they are physically located there, regardless of any virtual private network, proxy server, or any other means used to disguise geographic location. Read that once more slowly. The law is not trying to block VPNs at a technical level. It is legally voiding them. It is saying that whatever your connection looks like on the wire, the law sees through it. The law also prohibits covered websites from publishing any instructions on how to use a VPN to get around age checks. A platform cannot write a help article, cannot tweet advice, cannot tell its own users how to use a completely legal, commercially available tool to protect their own privacy. The Electronic Frontier Foundation flagged this immediately as a First Amendment concern, because it is not just regulating behavior, it is regulating speech. Specifically, truthful speech about a legal product. They call the enforcement mechanism a technical whack, a mole no company can realistically win. Because here is the core problem. There is no reliable way to detect a user's physical location when they are behind a VPN. IP reputation. Databases like MaxMind can flag traffic from known data center address ranges, but commercial VPN providers rotate addresses constantly. Residential VPN endpoints look identical to ordinary home connections. A personal WireGuard tunnel running on a cloud server is technically indistinguishable from standard web hosting traffic. The law demands enforcement of something the underlying technology cannot enforce. And it puts the legal liability entirely on the platform when enforcement fails. NordVPN called SB 73 a liability trap. That is not hyperbole. That is the precise legal structure of the bill. But here is the part nobody is talking about, and this is where the real damage is. Because platforms are held liable for VPN users they cannot reliably detect, they are not going to try to solve an impossible detection problem. They are going to manage their legal exposure. That means two options. Block every IP address associated with any known VPN provider as blanket protection, which is blunt and crude and affects millions of people who have nothing to do with Utah. Or require identity verification from every single visitor regardless of location, globally, to eliminate liability exposure entirely. Either option detonates well beyond the state's borders. Consider the scale. Utah has roughly 3.5 million residents. There are over 40 million VPN users in the United States. A law written inside a single state legislature by people who demonstrably do not understand VPN architecture could force age and identity checks on tens of millions of Americans who have never set foot in Utah and have zero connection to it. The EFF made this exact warning in their April 2026 analysis. Tom's Hardware noted it plainly. The law will most likely hurt non-technical users who rely on commercial VPN services for completely legitimate privacy reasons. This is not catastrophizing. This is the documented, predicted, logical outcome of legislation that does not understand the technology it is attempting to regulate. Now here is the twist, because if you think Utah is not the ceiling of this story, what is moving through Congress right now goes further by an order of magnitude. On April 13, 2026, Representatives Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey and Elise Stefanik of New York introduced H.R. 8250, the Parents Decide Act. Bipartisan, wrapped in a children's safety frame, practically impossible to vote against in a campaign cycle without generating attack ads. And what it actually proposes makes SB 73 look cautious and targeted by comparison. H.R. 8250 does not go after adult websites. It goes after operating system providers. Apple, Google, Microsoft. The bill would require every major OS provider to collect a user's verified date of birth before the device can even be set up. If the user is under 18, a parent or legal guardian must complete a verification step. And then, critically, the bill constructs API-level infrastructure allowing individual app developers to query any verified user's age on demand. Not just social media companies, not just platforms with adult content concerns. Any developer, every app, every service, every tool you install. Your verified identity anchored to your device at the operating system level, queryable by anyone who builds on that platform. The FTC enforces compliance. This is not a proposal about keeping explicit content off a child's phone. This is about building a national identity verification layer into the foundational architecture of the internet before you ever open a single browser tab or download a single app. California passed its own age verification law in October 2025, effective January 2027. Michigan and Wisconsin have both proposed bills with explicit VPN blocking provisions, not just liability exposure, actual mandated technical blocks on VPN traffic. The EFF stated directly that Utah is establishing a precedent that favors governmental control over the core principles of a private internet, and that this precedent will not stay within any state's borders. The evidence is already proving them right. Stop and think about who actually gets hurt first here, because this is where it becomes personal. Not you, watching this, who knows what a residential proxy is or how to spin up a WireGuard server on a Linode instance. The people who get crushed are the ones using commercial VPN services for reasons that have nothing to do with adult content at all. Journalists protecting sources in states where shield laws are weakening. Domestic abuse survivors using a VPN because their abuser monitors their home network and their phone bill. People in states with restrictive healthcare laws quietly accessing reproductive care information, mental health resources, or addiction treatment guidance without being tracked and profiled. Activists, whistleblowers, people who are not doing anything wrong by any reasonable standard, but who depend on the basic layer of anonymity that a VPN provides to stay safe in their actual physical lives. When platforms start blanket blocking VPN traffic as a compliance strategy under SB 73 and the laws that follow it, those people lose a safety tool, not a convenience, not a preference setting, a safety tool. That is not a theoretical outcome. Based on the structural incentives of the law, it is a scheduled one. The near-term enforcement picture under SB 73 is genuinely murky. The EFF has suggested platforms may default to a don't ask, don't tell posture, only acting when they have direct and specific evidence of a Utah-based VPN user. But that interpretation only survives until the first lawsuit, until the first state attorney general decides to make an enforcement example, until California goes live in January 2027 with its own version, until HR 825 clears committee with a bipartisan headline and a children's safety press conference attached. The political architecture of these laws is nearly perfectly designed to pass with minimal public scrutiny. Every legislator who votes against a children's online safety bill gets turned into a 30-second ad in the next primary season. The tech community understands the civil liberties implications in detail. Legislators understand the polling on child safety in detail. Right now, the polling is winning. That equation changes only when enough informed, vocal people make the technical implications impossible to ignore. Here is what you can do about it right now. Go to ef.org and use their direct action tool to contact your congressional representative about HR 825. The bill is in committee. It has not passed. Bipartisan sponsorship is not the same as inevitability. Amendments happen at the committee stage, and constituent pressure at exactly this moment is when it matters most. It takes under 2 minutes. Do it before you close this window. Second, financially support the organizations doing the actual legal and policy work. The EFF, the ACLU, and the Free Speech Coalition are actively litigating and lobbying against these laws simultaneously, on budgets that are genuinely embarrassing relative to the scale of what they are up against. A $10 monthly contribution funds the staff attorneys who show up to the committee hearings that nobody else attends, and that shape the final language of these bills. Third, track your specific state legislature, not just federal news. The most immediate threats are originating in state houses, not Washington. Michigan and Wisconsin residents especially need to be watching their state bill trackers right now. Go to your state legislature's website and search age verification. See what is moving. Fourth, build redundancy into your privacy setup. A single commercial VPN subscription is a starting point, not a complete strategy. Understand what Mullvad's no-log architecture offers. Understand what Proton VPN's threat model is. Learn at a functional level how WireGuard works and what self-hosting on a cheap VPS would look like for you personally. When commercial VPN providers face blanket IP blocks from platforms managing compliance risk, knowing your alternatives is the difference between being stranded and being fine. Fifth, pull this conversation outside the tech bubble. The reason these laws advance without sufficient resistance is structural. The people who understand the implications stay in their own communities, their own subreddits, their own Discord servers, while the votes happen in committee rooms with no audience. Send this video to one person in your life who does not consider themselves technical, but who uses the internet as a core part of their daily existence. That is the audience that actually shifts the political math on legislation like this. Age verification as a concept is not the villain here. Protecting children online is a real and legitimate goal, and nobody credible is arguing otherwise. But the infrastructure being constructed in the name of that goal does not get decommissioned once it solves the problem it was publicly sold to solve. It becomes permanent architecture. Once your verified identity is a prerequisite for using your operating system, anonymity is not something you recover through a privacy setting or a browser extension or even a VPN. It is engineered out of the system at a layer below where any of those tools operate. The argument over whether the internet remains a space where you can exist without surrendering your identity as the price of entry is being settled right now in state legislatures and congressional subcommittees, with almost no public attention on it. That is the actual story inside SB 73. Not the porn, not the children. The infrastructure. And once that infrastructure is built and normalized and embedded into every operating system sold in this country, it is permanent. That is the one outcome in tech policy that is genuinely hard to walk back. If you want to keep following this as it develops, subscribe, because we are going to stay on it every step of the way. Drop your take in the comments below. And if this landed, share it. Because the people who most need to see it are still the ones who think this is someone else's problem.